You are not weak. You are untrained. Your reactions are running your life. Messages pull you. Emotions push you. Urgency drives you forward without direction. This is not awareness. This is reflex. Stillness is the missing skill. Not calm. Not escape. Control. When you learn to observe without reacting, everything changes. Your decisions sharpen. Your energy stops leaking. Your mind becomes steady under pressure. This audiobook is about building that skill. Not theory. Training. Listen closely. Stillness is power when you know how to use it. Most people believe they are in control of their lives. They are not. They believe they are making decisions. They are not. What they are doing is reacting. All day. Every day. A message appears and they answer immediately. Someone criticizes them and they defend without thinking. A plan fails and they rush into panic. A delay happens and frustration takes over. This feels like action. It is not. Reaction is movement without direction. It is speed without control. Reaction removes choice. That's the key. When you react automatically, you are not deciding. You are being decided for. Look closely at how often this happens. Not in theory. In real moments. Your phone vibrates. Before you think, your hand moves. A comment bothers you. Before you reflect, you respond. Something goes wrong. Before you assess, you react emotionally. This pattern runs quietly. And it shapes outcomes more than talent, intelligence, or intention. Reaction feels productive because something is happening. But something happening is not the same as something improving. Control begins when reaction slows. That is not a suggestion. It is a requirement. You have a choice. But that choice only appears when speed disappears. Between what happens and what you do next, there is a gap. Most people rush through it so fast they never notice it exists. That gap is where control lives. Stillness is what opens that gap. Not calm. Not relaxation. Awareness. Stillness is the ability to pause without collapsing. To stop without freezing. It is trained. Everyday life provides constant triggers. Messages. Criticism. Delays. Unexpected problems. None of these require immediate reaction. But most people treat them as emergencies. A message feels urgent. But urgency is often emotional, not real. Criticism feels threatening. But threat does not equal danger. A delay feels personal. But delays are neutral events. Reaction turns neutral events into problems. Speed replaces thinking. Emotion replaces judgment. And later, people wonder why outcomes feel chaotic. You don't need their permission to pause. That's the key. When a message triggers you, your job is not to reply. Your job is to notice. Notice the urge to respond. Notice the tension in your body. Notice the story forming in your mind. Then stop. Do nothing for a moment. This is not suppression. It is leadership. It's not about ignoring what you feel. It's about deciding who is in charge. Most people give authority to emotion without question. Anger speaks first. Fear grabs control. Ego demands expression. Then damage follows. You have a choice. A pause of a few seconds can prevent a reaction that costs you hours. A pause of a minute can prevent consequences that last years. Stillness is not passive. It is preparatory. It prepares the mind to act cleanly. When criticism arrives, don't rush to defend. Defense is often a reaction, not a response. Let the words land. Let them sit. Ask one question. Is there something useful here? If yes, extract it. If not, release it. You don't need their permission to stay silent. That's the key. When plans fall apart, reaction says something is wrong. Control says something needs adjustment. Reaction dramatizes. Control evaluates. Reaction looks backward and complains. Control looks forward and adapts. It's not about optimism. It's about orientation. Reaction is emotional noise. Control is directional clarity. When multiple demands appear at once, stop treating everything as urgent. Urgency spreads quickly, but it rarely reflects reality. Just because someone wants an immediate answer does not mean one is required. Timing is leverage. Stillness protects timing. You don't need their permission to move deliberately. That's the key. Here is the truth most people avoid. Your biggest mistakes were not caused by bad intentions. They were caused by fast reactions. Words spoken too quickly. Decisions made too soon. Actions taken without observation. Reaction feels honest. But honesty without control is unstable. Discipline begins with interruption. The moment something triggers you, interrupt the pattern. Not with force. With awareness. Feel the impulse. Name it internally. Do not act on it immediately. This practice is simple. It is not easy. But it is effective. It's not about being calm all the time. It's about being clear before you move. It's not about eliminating emotion. It's about disciplining expression. Stillness creates clarity. Clarity creates better action. That sequence matters. You are not losing power when you pause. You are reclaiming it. Reaction is cheap. Anyone can react. Control requires training. And training happens in small moments. In messages not answered immediately. In criticism not returned instantly. In problems observed before being addressed. These moments compound. Over time, the mind learns a new default. Pause first. Act second. That is discipline. You have a choice. Every time. And every time you choose stillness over reaction, control strengthens. That's the key. You have now seen how reaction steals authority without asking. You understand how speed removes choice. And why stillness restores it. But reaction is only the surface problem. Next, you must learn how to create space intentionally before action. Because control does not survive without room to operate. Control does not appear automatically. It needs room. Most people never create that room. They move from trigger to action without space. From impulse to behavior without pause. That is why reaction dominates. You already understand that slowing reaction restores choice. Now you need to learn how to build space on purpose. Because control does not survive without distance. Space is not time wasted. Space is time claimed. Between what happens and what you do next, there must be separation. Not later. Not sometimes. Every time. That separation is not accidental. It is trained. Most people confuse speed with competence. They believe fast responses show intelligence. They believe immediate action proves confidence. It does not. Speed without space produces errors. Speed without space produces regret. You have a choice. But only if you create room for it. Space is where observation replaces impulse. Space is where clarity interrupts emotion. Stillness is the tool that creates this space. Not silence around you. Silence inside you. When something happens, the mind wants closure. It wants resolution now. It wants relief from tension. Reaction provides that relief. Briefly. Then consequences follow. Creating space feels uncomfortable at first. Because you are resisting habit. That discomfort is not danger. It is adjustment. That's the key. Space does not mean inaction. It means delayed action. Delayed action is not weakness. It is control. When you receive a message that triggers urgency, do not answer immediately. Read it. Close it. Do nothing for a moment. This moment is training. Notice what arises. The urge to reply. The urge to explain. The urge to correct. You do not need their permission to pause. That pause is space. In that space, ask one thing. What is actually required here? Not what feels required. What is required? Often, the answer is less than you think. Most situations do not need instant response. They need accurate response. Accuracy requires distance. Distance creates perspective. Stillness creates distance. That's the key. When criticism arrives, the mind contracts. It wants to protect identity. It wants to defend status. Space prevents that contraction from controlling you. Instead of reacting, step back. Internally. Let the words exist without response. You are not agreeing. You are not accepting. You are observing. Observation keeps authority internal. Reaction hands authority outward. You have a choice. Space allows you to choose the direction of response, not just the existence of one. This applies to setbacks as well. When plans fail, the mind searches for meaning. Often the wrong meaning. Reaction turns inconvenience into catastrophe. Space prevents escalation. Pause. Review facts only. What happened? What did not happen? What can be adjusted? Nothing else matters yet. Emotion comes later. If it comes at all. It's not about denial. It's about sequence. Discipline is correct sequence. Stillness comes first. Action comes second. That order determines outcomes. Most people reverse it. They act emotionally. Then justify logically. That pattern weakens control. Space breaks that pattern. You don't need their permission to slow the moment. That's the key. Urgency is the enemy of space. And urgency is often manufactured. Someone else's anxiety is not your emergency. Just because a problem is loud does not mean it is important. Space allows importance to surface. When everything feels urgent, nothing is prioritized correctly. Stillness filters noise. You create space by refusing to treat everything as immediate. This is not avoidance. It is hierarchy. You decide what moves first. That decision requires pause. Space also protects energy. Reaction leaks energy. Every emotional spike drains focus. Space conserves energy by reducing unnecessary output. Fewer words. Fewer explanations. Fewer reactions. More precision. Control becomes efficient. You have a choice. But that choice disappears when space disappears. This practice must be intentional. You will not remember it automatically at first. So you train it deliberately. Choose one trigger today. Messages. Criticism. Unexpected problems. When it appears, do not solve. Do not respond. Create space. Count silently if needed. 10 seconds. 20. That is enough to interrupt reflex. That interruption is discipline. Stillness is not passive waiting. It is active restraint. Restraint is strength. It is not about being slow in life. It is about being slow before life moves through you. Once clarity is established, action can be fast. Clean. Decisive. But speed must come after space. That's the key. Most people want better decisions without changing timing. That never works. Timing determines quality. Space determines timing.
Without space, the mind defaults to habit.
With space, the mind can choose. You don't need their permission to operate this way. Control does not require approval. It requires discipline.
As you practice creating space, you will notice something shift.
Reactions weaken. Urgency loses grip. Confidence stabilizes. Not because life is easier. Because you are no longer collapsing into it. Space gives you posture.
And posture determines how pressure affects you.
This chapter is not about thinking more. It is about reacting less. Less noise. Less speed. Less leakage. More space. You now understand that reaction steals control.
And you understand that space restores it.
But space alone is not enough.
You must learn how to handle what arises inside that space.
Because emotions will still appear. Next, you will learn how to observe emotion without obeying it. Emotions arrive without permission. They always have. The problem is not that emotions exist. The problem is how much authority people give them. Most people believe emotion should lead action. That belief quietly destroys control. Emotion is information. It is not instruction. That distinction changes everything. You feel anger. That does not mean you should act angry. You feel fear. That does not mean you should retreat. You feel excitement. That does not mean you should rush forward. Emotion signals something. It does not decide anything. That's the key. Most people confuse intensity with truth.
They assume the strongest feeling deserves the fastest response.
That assumption creates instability. You have a choice. But only if emotion is observed, not obeyed. Stillness creates that observation. When emotion appears, the body reacts first. Tension. Heat. Acceleration.
The mind follows with stories.
Justifications. Narratives.
If you act here, emotion is in control.
Instead, pause. Notice the sensation. Not the story. This is critical.
The sensation passes faster than the story.
If you do not feed it. Stillness starves emotional escalation. You are not suppressing emotion. You are refusing to amplify it. There is a difference. Suppression pushes emotion down. Observation lets it move through. Control lives in observation. That's the key.
Most emotional damage happens in the first moments.
Words spoken. Actions taken. Messages sent.
Later, people regret the response.
Not the feeling. The feeling was temporary.
The response created permanence.
You don't need their permission to feel. You don't need their permission to pause. Emotion does not require expression to be valid. This belief must be removed. Expression is optional. Control is not. You have a choice. Anger often signals boundary violation. Fear often signals uncertainty. Anxiety often signals overload. Signals require interpretation, not reaction. Stillness gives you time to interpret. Ask internally. What is this feeling pointing to? Do not ask, what should I do yet? Sequence matters. First observe. Then decide. Discipline is correct sequence. Most people reverse it. They act emotionally. Then rationalize afterward. That pattern weakens judgment. Stillness interrupts that pattern. When criticism triggers anger, pause. Let the sensation rise. Let it peak. Let it fall. Do not speak yet. You will notice something important. The urge loses force. Clarity returns. Now you can decide. Respond. Adjust. Ignore. All are valid. Reaction is not. You don't need their permission to choose restraint. That's the key. Fear works the same way. Fear wants avoidance. Fear wants retreat.
But fear does not see clearly.
Stillness prevents fear from controlling direction. Pause. Breathe naturally. Notice sensation only. Do not negotiate with fear immediately. Fear exaggerates. Space reduces exaggeration.
Then decide what action aligns with your values.
Not your comfort. It's not about eliminating fear. It's about refusing to obey it. That is discipline. Anxiety often comes from too much input. Too many thoughts. Too many demands. Reaction to anxiety creates more anxiety. Stillness reduces volume. Do less. Speak less. Move slower. Clarity emerges when noise decreases.
Emotion settles when attention stops feeding it.
That's the key. You are not your emotions. They move through you. Identity should never be built on temporary states. When emotion defines identity, control disappears. Stillness reminds you that emotion is weather, not terrain. It passes. You remain.
This requires practice.
You will forget. You will react. That is part of training. Do not attack yourself for it. Observe it. Self-judgment is another emotional reaction. Stillness applies inward as well. Notice the mistake. Adjust next time. That is discipline. You have a choice. Even after reacting. Most people double down after emotional action. They justify. They defend. That compounds damage. Stillness allows correction. You can stop mid-pattern. Silence after reaction is still control regained. Do not continue reacting just to be consistent. Consistency without control is stubbornness. That's the key. As you train this skill, you will notice a shift. Emotions still appear. But they move faster. They have less grip. Your responses become shorter. Cleaner. More deliberate. You waste less energy explaining yourself. You don't need their permission to be composed. Composure is internal. This does not make you passive. It makes you precise. Precision outperforms intensity. Always. Stillness is not emotional numbness. It is emotional order. Order creates strength. Strength creates trust. In yourself. This chapter is about reclaiming authority. Not over others. Over your internal state. Without that authority, discipline collapses. You cannot build control on emotional instability.
Now you understand how emotion works. And how stillness keeps it in its place.
But emotion is only one internal force. Next, you must learn how urgency distorts judgment. Because urgency pressures action even when emotion is quiet. And pressure without clarity creates mistakes. Urgency feels important. That is why it is dangerous. Most urgency is manufactured. By emotion. By fear. By habit. People rush because they believe speed equals effectiveness. It does not. Speed without clarity multiplies error. Urgency pressures action before thinking is complete. It narrows vision. It shortens patience. It removes choice. That's the key. Real urgency is rare. Life and safety. Critical deadlines with irreversible consequences. Everything else only feels urgent. Messages. Notifications. Demands. Expectations. None of these require immediate reaction. But people treat them as if they do. This creates a constant state of pressure. And pressure degrades judgment. You have a choice. But urgency tries to hide it. Urgency speaks in absolutes. Now. Immediately. Before it's too late. Those phrases trigger compliance. Stillness exposes the illusion. Pause when urgency appears. Ask one question internally. What actually happens if I wait? Most of the time, the answer is simple. Nothing meaningful. Clarity returns the moment urgency is questioned. Urgency survives on unquestioned obedience. That's the key.
People rush replies to appear competent. They rush decisions to appear decisive. They rush action to avoid discomfort.
None of this produces better outcomes. It produces exhaustion. Urgency is often avoidance in disguise. Avoidance of thinking. Avoidance of uncertainty. Avoidance of saying no. Stillness forces confrontation with reality. Reality is calmer than urgency suggests. When someone pressures you for a response, pause. Let silence work. Silence is not weakness. It is leverage. Silence creates space. Space reveals intent. Often, urgency benefits the other person. Not you. You don't need their permission to slow down. That belief must be removed. Time is not owed on demand. Urgency tries to make everything equal priority. That is false. Discipline is choosing sequence, not reacting to volume. Stillness restores hierarchy. Ask yourself, does this move me forward? Or does it just reduce pressure? Pressure relief is not progress. That's the key. Urgency also distorts self-talk. You start saying, I must decide now. I can't think about this later. Those statements are rarely true. Most decisions improve with distance. Distance removes emotion. Distance removes noise. Stillness creates distance. Delay is not avoidance when used intentionally. Delay is strategy. High-level decisions are slow by design. Only low-quality decisions demand speed. Observe successful operators. They pause. They consider. They do not rush to prove anything. They understand that urgency is a tool. And they choose when to use it. You should do the same. You have a choice. Urgency feels productive because it keeps you busy. Busy is not effective. Busyness prevents evaluation. Stillness allows evaluation. Evaluation prevents waste. Most mistakes come from acting too soon. Not too late. People regret rushed messages. Rushed commitments. Rushed agreements. They rarely regret waiting. Waiting reveals information. That's the key. Urgency also feeds anxiety. The faster you move, the less control you feel. The less control you feel, the more you rush. This loop must be broken. Stillness breaks it immediately. Slow your body first. Sit still. Breathe naturally. Do not try to solve anything yet. Let the nervous system settle. When the body slows, the mind follows. Then evaluate. What is required? What is optional? What can wait? You will notice most things fall into the last category. This realization changes behavior. You respond less. You choose more. You don't need their permission to prioritize clarity. Urgency is often used to control people. Deadlines imposed without consequence. Pressure framed as responsibility. Recognize this. Control remains with the one who can wait. Stillness returns control to you. Not through resistance. Through non-participation. You are not obligated to match another person's speed. That belief creates chronic stress. Remove it. That's the key. Urgency inside your own mind is just as dangerous. Internal pressure. Self-imposed timelines. Unrealistic expectations. These create constant dissatisfaction. Stillness reduces internal urgency. You do not need to rush your growth. Progress compounds with consistency, not speed. Slow discipline beats fast motivation. Always. When urgency appears internally, observe it like emotion. Do not obey it immediately. Ask, is this pressure aligned with reality? Often, it is not. Stillness reveals truth. Truth is calm. Urgency is loud because it is insecure. Secure decisions do not shout. They wait. You have a choice. As you train this skill, your pace will change. You will move slower, but arrive more accurately. Fewer corrections. Fewer regrets. Your actions will carry more weight. Because they are chosen. Not rushed. Stillness is not inactivity. It is controlled timing. Timing is power. This chapter is about reclaiming time. Not externally. Internally. When urgency no longer controls you, discipline strengthens. But there is another force that erodes discipline quietly. Distraction. Because distraction fragments attention. And fragmented attention destroys consistency. Now you understand urgency. Next, you must learn how distraction weakens control without noise. Distraction does not announce itself. It enters quietly. And it stays. Urgency shouts. Distraction whispers. That is why distraction is more dangerous. Distraction fragments attention. And fragmented attention destroys discipline. You cannot control what you cannot hold. Most people believe distraction is harmless. A message. A scroll. A quick check. They are wrong. Distraction trains the mind to abandon focus. Every interruption teaches your attention to leave. That's the key. Attention is a muscle. What you practice is what you strengthen. When you constantly shift focus, you train instability. Instability becomes default behavior. Then discipline feels impossible. Not because you lack will, but because your attention is untrained. You have a choice. Distraction is not random. It follows patterns. Moments of boredom. Moments of discomfort. Moments of uncertainty. Instead of staying present, the mind escapes. This escape feels relieving. But it creates dependency. The brain begins to seek stimulation on demand. Silence becomes uncomfortable. Stillness feels empty. This is conditioning. And conditioning can be reversed. Distraction weakens control by stealing continuity. Progress requires uninterrupted blocks of attention. Distraction resets momentum. Every time you switch tasks, your mind pays a cost. Focus must rebuild. Energy drains. Time disappears without output. That's the key. People think they are multitasking. They are not. They are context switching. Context switching creates fatigue without progress. The result is exhaustion without accomplishment. Stillness protects attention. Stillness creates containment. Containment allows depth. Depth produces results. Observe your own behavior. How often do you break focus unnecessarily? How often do you check something without purpose? These habits feel small. They are not. They compound. Distraction shapes identity. You become someone who cannot stay. Cannot remain. Cannot finish cleanly. This is not a personality trait. It is trained behavior. And trained behavior can be untrained. You don't need their permission to protect your attention. Notifications are requests, not commands. Treat them accordingly. That belief must be installed. Attention is your primary asset. Everything meaningful requires it. Without attention, effort scatters.
Discipline collapses when attention collapses.
That's the key. Distraction also disguises itself as productivity. You respond. You engage. You consume. You feel active. But activity is not direction. Movement without intention is drift. Drift feels busy, but it leads nowhere. Stillness restores direction. When you remove distraction, resistance appears. Restlessness. Impulse. The urge to check. This is withdrawal. It proves the habit exists. Do not escape it. Observe it. Sit with the urge without acting. This is training. Each time you resist distraction, control strengthens. You are teaching the mind that it does not lead. That's the key. Distraction weakens emotional regulation. When attention jumps constantly, emotions do too. You react more. You regulate less. Stillness stabilizes emotion by stabilizing attention. One focus. One task. One thought at a time. This reduces internal noise. Noise is not intensity. It is inefficiency. Silence sharpens clarity. Clarity improves judgment. Judgment improves outcomes.
This chain only begins when distraction ends. People fear removing distraction because they fear facing themselves.
Distraction numbs awareness. Stillness reveals truth. Truth can be uncomfortable.
But discomfort is where discipline forms.
Avoidance weakens you. Exposure strengthens you. You have a choice. Start small.
Designate protected focus periods.
No devices. No interruptions. No switching. Short at first.
Consistency matters more than duration.
Train staying.
When the urge to escape appears, note it.
Do not obey it. This is how attention is reclaimed. That's the key. Distraction is also social.
Other people project their lack of focus onto you.
They interrupt.
They demand attention.
They assume availability. You are not required to comply. Boundaries protect discipline. Boundaries are not explanations. They are decisions. Stillness allows you to hold boundaries without defensiveness.
You respond when appropriate.
Not immediately.
This changes how others treat you.
Because control is recognized instinctively. Distraction disappears when standards are enforced. Internally and externally. Discipline requires reduction. Less input. Less noise. Less reaction. More depth. More presence. More completion. That's the key. Distraction keeps goals distant.
Because goals require sustained effort.
Effort requires focus. Focus requires stillness. Stillness is not passive. It is active restraint.
Restraint builds power.
Power expresses itself through precision. Precision only comes from attention. You cannot aim while scattered. Remove distraction, and direction sharpens. This chapter is about reclaiming attention. Not forcefully. Deliberately. When attention is controlled, discipline stabilizes. And when discipline stabilizes, identity changes. You stop being reactive. You stop being scattered. You become intentional. But attention alone is not enough. Because attention must be applied consistently.
Consistency is built through routine.
And routine requires structure.
Now that distraction is exposed, it is time to build the framework that sustains control.
Structure is not restriction. Structure is relief. Most people resist structure because they confuse it with control imposed from the outside. They imagine rules, limits, loss of freedom. They misunderstand the function. Structure removes friction. And friction is what exhausts the mind. Every decision you delay, every choice you debate, every moment you improvise unnecessarily. It drains energy. That's the key. Lack of structure forces constant decision-making. What to do next? When to do it? How to start? This creates mental noise before action even begins. Noise weakens discipline. Discipline does not fail from effort. It fails from overload. You have a choice. You can rely on motivation. Or you can rely on structure. Motivation fluctuates. Structure holds. People who appear disciplined are rarely exerting constant willpower. They are following systems. Systems decide so the mind does not have to. This is not rigidity. It is conservation. Stillness is easier inside structure. Because uncertainty is reduced. When you know what comes next, reaction slows naturally. The mind stops scanning for options. It settles. That's the key. Structure creates predictability. Predictability stabilizes attention. Stabilized attention strengthens control. This sequence is non-negotiable. Most emotional reactions occur during transitions. Between tasks. Between plans. Between expectations and reality. Structure smooths transitions. It removes gaps where impulse enters. Observe your own behavior. When do you lose control? It is rarely during deep engagement. It is when direction is unclear. Structure provides direction before emotion can interfere. This is why routine works. Routine reduces negotiation. Negotiation invites emotion. Emotion disrupts discipline. That's the key. Structure also limits choice deliberately. Too many options weaken commitment. When everything is possible, nothing is anchored. Anchoring attention requires constraints. Constraints focus effort. Focus produces progress. This applies to work, to habits, to communication. Decide in advance. When you wake, when you train, when you work, when you disconnect. Do not leave these decisions to mood. Mood is unreliable. Structure removes mood from the equation. You don't need their permission to organize your life. External demands will always expand. If you do not set structure, others will set it for you. Their urgency becomes your schedule. Their priorities replace yours. This is how attention is stolen. Structure defends time. Time defended becomes leverage. Leverage compounds. That's the key. Structure also protects stillness. When time is unstructured, stillness feels like avoidance. When time is structured, stillness becomes preparation. You know when to act. And when not to. This clarity reduces anxiety. Anxiety comes from uncertainty. Structure reduces uncertainty. Stillness thrives inside certainty. People think freedom means open time. It does not. Open time invites distraction. Freedom comes from intentional time. Time with a purpose. Purpose removes guilt from rest. Rest becomes recovery, not escape. This allows deeper engagement when it is time to act. That's the key. Structure must be simple. Complex systems fail under pressure. Simple rules hold. Start times. End times. Clear blocks. No constant adjustments. Consistency builds trust with yourself. Trust reduces internal conflict. Internal conflict is what causes hesitation. Structure eliminates hesitation. You move because the system moves you. This is discipline without strain. Stillness before action becomes automatic. Because the environment supports it. Your surroundings shape behavior. Structure designs surroundings intentionally. Remove triggers. Create cues. This is not weakness. It is strategy. High control individuals engineer conditions. They do not rely on impulse. That's the key. Structure also trains patience. When outcomes are scheduled, urgency decreases. You are less reactive because you are less rushed. Rushing creates mistakes. Mistakes create emotional responses. Structure slows the process just enough. Not to delay, but to stabilize. Stability produces accuracy. Accuracy produces confidence. Confidence reduces reactivity. This cycle reinforces itself. You have a choice. Live reactively, or live architecturally. Reactive living responds to pressure. Architectural living designs around pressure. Stillness belongs to the architect. Reaction belongs to the improviser. Improvisation has its place. But discipline is built on repeatability. Repeatability requires structure. This is where freedom actually emerges. When discipline is consistent, choice expands. Because energy is preserved. Because attention is protected. Because emotion is regulated. Structure is not control over life. It is control over response. That's the key. Begin with one area. Morning. Work. Evening. Create a simple framework. Honor it. Do not optimize endlessly. Stability first. Refinement later. Structure must be lived, not admired. Its power comes from repetition. Once structure holds, stillness becomes natural. And once stillness is stable, the next layer of discipline can be applied. Because control is not just about time. It is about speech. And what you allow yourself to express. You've learned how structure protects attention and reduces reaction. Now it's time to understand how silence multiplies control. Speech reveals control. Or the absence of it. Most people speak too quickly. Too much. Too defensively. Not because they have something important to say, but because silence makes them uncomfortable. That's the key. Uncontrolled speech is a form of reaction. Words escape before thought settles. Explanations spill out. Justifications follow. Emotion leads. And once words are released, control is lost. You cannot retract tone. You cannot undo implication. Speech is permanent in impact, even when forgotten in detail. Stillness must exist before words. Without that pause, speech becomes leakage. Energy leaks. Authority leaks. Position leaks. You have a choice. You can speak to discharge emotion. Or you can speak with intention. Most people speak to relieve pressure. They feel something. They express it. Temporary relief. Long-term cost. Controlled individuals do not speak to feel better. They speak to move outcomes. That's the difference. Silence is not avoidance. Silence is filtration. It allows the mind to organize before expression. Words sharpen when delayed. Clarity improves. Impact increases. Reaction speaks fast. Control speaks when ready. Observe conversations closely. Notice who talks first. It is usually the least stable person in the room. They fill space. They explain. They defend. They reveal urgency. Urgency weakens position. Stillness strengthens it. You don't need their permission to remain silent. Silence is not consent. It is composure. Most arguments escalate because both sides rush to speak. Neither side listens. Speech becomes competition. Control exits. The disciplined response is pause. Let the other person finish. Let the words land. Notice the impulse to interrupt. Do nothing yet. That pause is power. That's the key. Speech should be intentional, not habitual. Ask yourself before speaking. Is this necessary? Is this accurate? Is this useful? If it fails these tests, silence is superior. This is not suppression. It is selection. You are choosing quality over quantity. Emotion wants expression. Discipline wants alignment. It's not about being quiet. It's about being precise. Most people confuse volume with authority.
Authority is felt, not heard.
It comes from restraint, from timing, from clarity.
Words spoken too often lose weight.
Words spoken rarely carry force. That's the key. Consider criticism. When criticized, reaction wants defense. Immediate explanation. Immediate justification. But defense signals vulnerability. It shows the words hit. Control does not rush to defend. It evaluates. If the criticism contains truth, extract it. If it does not, discard it. Neither requires explanation. Silence denies escalation. You don't need their permission to disengage. Most conflicts survive on response. Starve them.
Silence collapses unnecessary tension. This applies to messages as well.
Not every message deserves an immediate reply. Speed does not equal respect. Availability does not equal discipline. When you reply instantly, you train others to expect access. Access reduces leverage. Leverage requires delay. Delay creates space. Space restores choice. You have a choice. Respond on impulse. Or respond on schedule.
Controlled speech respects timing.
Timing shapes perception. Perception shapes outcomes. That's the key. Observe how much you explain yourself. Excessive explanation signals uncertainty. Certainty speaks briefly. Long explanations attempt to convince. Conviction does not persuade. It stands. Silence after a clear statement reinforces authority. Let others process. Do not fill the gap. The gap is working for you. Most people sabotage their own statements by continuing to talk. They weaken their point. They dilute impact. They betray insecurity. Say what is necessary. Then stop. Stillness after speech is as important as stillness before it. This is discipline. Speech must serve intention, not emotion, not ego, not anxiety. Emotion-driven speech seeks validation. Controlled speech does not. You don't need their permission to be misunderstood temporarily. Clarity emerges over time through consistency, not explanation. This applies internally as well. Watch your internal dialogue. Excessive self-talk increases reactivity. Constant narration amplifies emotion. Silence inside precedes silence outside. Stillness must be practiced internally first. Reduce commentary. Observe without labeling. This trains restraint. Restraint strengthens control. Control stabilizes behavior. Behavior shapes results. That's the key. Silence also protects energy. Speech consumes attention. Listening restores it. When you speak less, you hear more. Information increases. Position improves. This is not passivity. It is awareness. Awareness precedes intelligent action.
Disciplined speech means choosing when not to speak.
That choice builds pressure. Pressure creates influence. Influence does not need volume. It needs consistency. Most people exhaust influence by overuse. They talk themselves into irrelevance. Controlled individuals conserve influence. They release it strategically. This makes their words matter. You have a choice. Speak to react. Or speak to direct. Reaction fills space. Direction shapes it. Stillness before speech is what separates the two. Practice this daily. Pause before replying. Shorten responses. Remove emotional language. Let silence do its work. This is not withdrawal. It is command. Command over self precedes command over outcomes.
You've learned how structure and silence protect control.
But control must be applied where it matters most.
At the source of behavior itself.
Attention. Attention determines outcomes. Not talent. Not intelligence. Not intention.
Where your attention goes, behavior follows.
And most people have no control over it.
They believe they are choosing what to focus on.
They are not. Their attention is being pulled. Fragmented. Spent without consent. That's the key. Attention is not neutral. It is a resource.
And every resource can be wasted or directed.
Most people leak attention through distraction. Messages. Notifications. Noise. Small interruptions. Constantly repeated. Each one seems harmless. Together, they dismantle control. You have a choice. You can allow your attention to be captured. Or you can guard it deliberately. Guarding attention is not avoidance. It is discipline. Attention precedes action. Action creates results. If attention is scattered, results will be unstable. If attention is steady, outcomes become predictable. Reaction thrives on divided attention. Control requires focus. Observe how often your focus is broken. Mid-task interruptions. Unplanned checks. Mental drifting. Each break resets momentum. Momentum takes time to rebuild. Most people never stay focused long enough to build it.
They mistake movement for progress.
They are busy. But ineffective. That's the key. Stillness protects attention. Stillness creates a boundary. Within that boundary, focus stabilizes. This is not about intensity. It is about continuity.
Short bursts of focus do not produce mastery.
Sustained attention does. You don't need their permission to disconnect. Accessibility is not obligation. Being reachable does not mean being available. Availability without control erodes authority. When you respond to everything, you commit to nothing. Attention must be allocated, not surrendered. Set conditions for access. Decide when you will engage. Decide when you will not. Structure removes negotiation. Negotiation drains energy. Most distraction is optional.
But it feels urgent.
Urgency is persuasive. Rarely accurate. Control requires resisting false urgency. Just because something appears does not mean it matters. Attention must be earned. That's the key. Examine how you start your day. Most people give their attention away immediately. Messages first. Updates first. Noise first. This sets the tone. Reaction becomes default. Instead, begin with intention. Decide the primary focus before exposure. One priority. One direction. Attention follows decision. Without decision, it follows stimulus. Stimulus-driven behavior is not freedom. It is drift. Guard the first hour. It determines the rest. Stillness early creates stability later. The same applies throughout the day. When switching tasks, pause. Reset focus deliberately. Do not carry residue forward. Attention degrades when dragged across tasks. Single tasking is discipline. Multitasking is distraction wearing a mask. You have a choice. Finish what you start. or scatter effort. Completion builds confidence. Fragmentation builds frustration. That's the key. Attention is also internal. Mental loops consume focus. Unresolved thoughts replay. Worries repeat. This steals presence. Stillness interrupts internal noise. When thoughts arise, notice them. Do not chase. Do not suppress. Let them pass. Observation without engagement restores clarity. This is training. The mind resists at first. Discomfort appears. Restlessness increases. That is normal. Discipline grows through resistance. The urge to escape focus is the training signal. Stay. Attention strengthens when held under pressure. Pressure is not the enemy. It is the condition. Guarding attention also means removing excess. Reduce inputs. Not everything deserves consumption. Information overload is not intelligence. It is noise accumulation. Select what enters your mind. Less input. More depth. Depth creates understanding. Understanding creates control. That's the key. Notice how often attention is pulled toward emotion. Anger. Anxiety. Comparison. Emotional content hijacks focus. It feels important. It is rarely productive. Redirect attention back to action. What can be done now? Not what is felt. Action stabilizes emotion. Emotion does not stabilize action. It's not about ignoring feelings. It's about not letting them steer. Attention must stay on behavior. Behavior is controllable. Feelings are transient. You don't need their permission to disengage mentally. Just because something exists does not require attention. Attention is your leverage. Spend it carefully. When you protect attention, time expands. Clarity improves. Decisions sharpen. Results accelerate. This is not intensity. It is alignment. Aligned attention removes friction. Friction wastes effort. Most people exhaust themselves fighting distraction. Controlled individuals remove it. That's the key. Practice this daily. Limit inputs. Define focus windows. Pause before shifting attention. Notice when focus slips. Return it calmly. No judgment. This is training, not perfection. Consistency matters more than force. You've learned how silence and attention restore control. But control must be sustained under difficulty. When pressure increases. When resistance appears. That's where most people break. Next, you learn how discipline holds firm under stress. Pressure does not create weakness. It reveals it. When pressure rises, habits surface. Training shows. Lack of training shows faster. Most people believe they fail under pressure because pressure is extreme. That is not true. They fail because control was never built when things were calm. Pressure only exposes what already exists. That's the key. Under pressure, reaction accelerates. Emotion intensifies. Urgency tightens. If stillness is not trained, it collapses. You have a choice. But only if steadiness has been practiced beforehand. Stability under stress is not personality. It is conditioning. People who remain calm are not special. They are prepared. Preparation is quiet. Invisible. But it determines everything when stakes rise. Pressure narrows attention. It compresses time. It amplifies emotion. Without discipline, this leads to panic. With discipline, it leads to clarity. Stillness does not disappear under pressure. It becomes more important. That's the key. Most mistakes made under stress are not technical. They are emotional. Rushed decisions. Defensive behavior. Unnecessary escalation. Pressure triggers the instinct to act immediately. Immediate action feels relieving. Relief is not resolution. Reaction reduces discomfort briefly, then multiplies consequences. Control delays relief, but protects outcome.
You don't need their permission to slow down when things intensify.
Pressure will try to convince you otherwise. It will say, "Act now. Fix this immediately."
That voice is not intelligence.
It is fear. Stillness quiets fear.
Pause when pressure hits.
Not externally. Internally. Slow the body first. Relax the jaw. Drop the shoulders. Breathe normally. This is not relaxation. It is regulation. The body leads the mind. When the body slows, thought widens. That's the key. Pressure also distorts perception. Small problems appear large. Temporary setbacks feel permanent. Stillness restores proportion. Ask simple questions. What is actually happening?
What is within control?
What can wait? Most pressure collapses when examined. Examination requires space. Space requires discipline. This is why preparation matters. If you wait until pressure appears to practice control, you are too late. Stillness must already exist. Pressure is not the training ground. It is the test. Training happens earlier.
In small frustrations.
In delays. In minor resistance.
Those moments condition response.
When pressure rises, the body defaults to what it knows. If it knows reaction, reaction appears. If it knows stillness, stillness holds. You have a choice. But choice is only available when the system is trained. That's the key. Under pressure, people also over-communicate. They explain. They justify. They talk excessively. This weakens position. Words multiply when confidence drops. Controlled individuals speak less under stress. They listen more. They observe more. They let silence stabilize the situation. You don't need their permission to pause communication. Silence under pressure is not absence. It is command. Pressure tests boundaries. People push harder. Demand faster. Expect more. If boundaries collapse, discipline collapses with them. Stillness allows you to hold boundaries without aggression. Calm refusal is stronger than emotional compliance. Pressure respects composure. Chaos feeds on reaction. That's the key. Pressure also reveals attachment. Attachment to outcome. Attachment to approval. Attachment to being right. These attachments generate fear. Fear accelerates reaction. Stillness loosens attachment. You focus on process, not outcome. Process is controllable. Outcome is not. Under pressure, return to process. What is the next correct step? Not the final result. One step. Then the next. This reduces overwhelm. Overwhelm is not volume. It is lack of sequence. Sequence restores order. Stillness allows sequencing. Pressure disrupts sequence only when reaction leads. You have a choice. Train yourself to slow thinking under stress. Not by thinking harder. By thinking less. Reduce input. Reduce speech. Reduce movement. Stability increases as excess decreases. This is counterintuitive. Most people speed up when pressured. Controlled individuals slow down. They appear calm because they are selective. Selectivity is discipline. That's the key. Pressure also exposes identity. If identity is tied to performance, pressure destabilizes. If identity is tied to behavior,
pressure strengthens. Behavior can be controlled. Results cannot always.
Detach identity from outcome. Anchor it in execution. Did you act with discipline? Did you maintain control?
If yes, pressure did not win.
Even if results are delayed. This mindset preserves stability. Stability preserves momentum. Momentum under pressure outperforms panic every time. Stillness is not the absence of intensity.
It is intensity contained.
Contained intensity is powerful. Uncontained intensity is destructive. Pressure amplifies both. That's the key. Notice how pressure affects your body.
Clenched muscles.
Shallow breathing. Rapid movement. These are signals, not commands.
Respond to signals with regulation.
Then act. Never reverse the order. Emotion wants to move first. Discipline insists on sequence. You don't need their permission to operate this way. Pressure does not outrank control. Control outranks pressure.
This must be practiced deliberately. Expose yourself to manageable pressure. Train stillness there.
Then increase difficulty. This is how steadiness is built. Not by avoiding stress. By meeting it with discipline. Pressure handled well becomes confidence. Confidence reduces future reaction. This cycle strengthens control. Over time, pressure loses its grip. Not because life is easier. Because you are steadier. This chapter is about resilience. Not toughness. Toughness resists. Resilience absorbs and adapts. Resilience requires stillness. Without stillness, there is only force. Force breaks. Control endures. You now understand how to remain steady when pressure rises. But steadiness alone is not enough. Control must be maintained daily. Not only when tested. Consistency is what turns discipline into identity. And identity determines long-term outcomes. Next, you will learn how stillness becomes a permanent practice. Not an occasional response. Stillness is not something you visit. It is something you live inside. Most people treat control as situational. They try to be disciplined only when things go wrong. That never works. Control must be constant. That's the key. If stillness is optional, reaction will eventually win. Reaction is fast. Habitual. Always ready. Stillness must be stronger. And strength only comes from consistency. You have a choice. You can practice stillness occasionally. Or you can make it non-negotiable. Only one of those builds identity. Non-negotiable means there are no exceptions. Not when tired. Not when busy. Not when emotional. Especially not then. Stillness is not a response to chaos. It is a condition you maintain before chaos appears. Most people wait for stress to calm down. That moment never arrives. Life does not pause. So discipline must operate while things are moving. Stillness is how you move without losing control. That's the key. Making stillness non-negotiable means defining standards. Standards for reaction. Standards for speech. Standards for attention. Without standards, behavior defaults to impulse. Impulse is not evil. It is simply untrained. Training replaces impulse with choice. Stillness is the training ground. Every day offers opportunities. Messages you do not answer immediately. Emotions you do not express instantly. Thoughts you observe without engaging. These moments look small. They are not. They compound. Identity is built through repetition, not through intention. If you practice stillness daily, you become someone who pauses. If you pause consistently, you become someone who chooses. If you choose repeatedly, control becomes natural. That's the progression. You don't need their permission to live this way. No one will approve it for you. Most people are uncomfortable around controlled individuals. Because control exposes instability. Expect resistance. Not outwardly. Internally. You will feel the urge to react. To explain. To prove. That urge is habit fighting extinction. Do not negotiate with it. Observe it. Stillness applies here as well. When discipline feels uncomfortable, that is confirmation you are training correctly. Comfort is not the metric. Consistency is. You have a choice. Consistency builds trust with yourself. Trust reduces internal friction. Friction is what drains energy. When friction drops, effort feels lighter. Not because tasks are easier. Because resistance is lower. This is why stillness multiplies output without increasing force. Stillness removes unnecessary movement. Movement costs energy. Precision conserves it. That's the key. Making stillness non-negotiable also means removing exceptions. Exceptions weaken systems. I'll react just this once. I'll respond immediately this time. Those decisions retrain reaction. One exception reinforces the old pattern. Discipline does not survive inconsistency. You cannot build control with conditional rules. Rules must hold under pressure. Otherwise, they are suggestions. Stillness is not a suggestion. It is a requirement. This does not mean rigidity. It means reliability. Reliable behavior creates stability. Stability allows adaptation without chaos. This is the difference between control and stiffness. Control bends without breaking. Reaction snaps. You have a choice. Stillness must also be practiced when things are going well. Success creates its own danger. Ego. Complacency. Overconfidence. These erode discipline quietly. Reaction does not only appear in stress. It appears in excitement. When things go well, people rush. They overextend. They speak too much. Stillness prevents self-sabotage during momentum. It keeps you grounded when progress accelerates. That's the key. Stillness also anchors values. Without pause, values are forgotten in the moment. Impulse overrides principle. Stillness gives values time to surface. Before action. This alignment is what creates integrity. Integrity is internal consistency. Consistency builds strength. Strength builds confidence. Confidence reduces reaction. The cycle reinforces itself. You do not need to force calm. You need to remove interference. Noise interferes. Urgency interferes. Distraction interferes. Stillness clears interference. Clarity remains. Clarity does not shout. It waits. Most people fear waiting because they confuse it with indecision. It is not. Indecision avoids commitment. Stillness prepares commitment. Once clarity is present, action is simple. Not dramatic. Not rushed. Clean. That's the key. Making stillness non-negotiable means scheduling it. Not as meditation. As default behavior. Pause before responding. Pause before speaking. Pause before switching tasks. These pauses are brief. But their effect is permanent. Over time, reaction weakens. It loses speed. Eventually, it no longer leads. Choice does. You have a choice. Even when you fail. Failure does not remove discipline. Only abandonment does. If you react, return to stillness immediately. Do not spiral. Spiraling is another reaction. Correction is control. The ability to reset quickly is mastery. Perfection is not required. Recovery speed is. Stillness shortens recovery. Because it removes judgment. Judgment prolongs error. Observation corrects it. This is how discipline becomes resilient. Not fragile. Fragile discipline breaks under pressure. Resilient discipline adapts. Stillness is what makes it resilient. That's the key. Over time, you will notice a shift. Less explanation. Less urgency. Less emotional noise. More clarity. More restraint. More precision. People will respond differently to you. Not because you demand respect. Because control is felt. It does not need to announce itself. Stillness carries authority quietly. This is the rarest advantage in the modern world. Most minds are noisy. Few are trained. Those few operate differently. They do not rush. They do not react. They do not leak energy. They decide. This audiobook was not about calm. It was about command. Command over attention. Command over emotion. Command over response. Stillness is the foundation of that command. Make it non-negotiable. Practice it daily. Pause first. Observe. Then act. Do not look for permission. Do not wait for conditions. Begin now. Because control does not arrive later. It is built in the moments you choose stillness over reaction. And once built, it changes everything. You have seen the pattern. Reaction drains energy. Observation restores control. Stillness is not passive. It is deliberate. It is trained. When you pause, you choose. When you choose, you lead. When you lead yourself, the noise loses power. This is not about avoiding life. It is about meeting it without chaos. The mind you train in quiet moments is the mind that holds under pressure. No rushing. No leaking energy. No unnecessary reaction. From this point forward, slow the moment. Observe first. Respond second. Build the skill daily. Protect the gap. Use stillness as your advantage.